Hey guys, I'm your host Smitha and welcome to Journey Podcast, your weekly podcast on transformational journeys. Hello everybody, I have Rish Mitra with me. He launched a podcast called Dads and Deadlifts to help men overcome their shame and guilt and accept the authentic versions of themselves instead of putting a tough face and lead to addiction and other negative behaviors. Rish had been researching this subject, talking to various experts from coaches, psychiatrists, psychologists, scientists, social case workers, counselors, doctors, and survivors and victims to understand the root cause of domestic violence, addiction, depression, and anxiety. His mission in life is to serve boys, men, and dad. I don't know why you are specific about only boys, men, and dad, but again, he lives, he has 2.5-year-old adorable son. I have seen his pictures. You have to follow his social media. Everywhere he has his son's pictures, you will absolutely fall in love with him the minute you see. But yeah, Rish, welcome to our show. Thanks for being here and thanks for willing to share your story with us.
Thank you. Thank you. That's a quite an introduction, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, really, thanks. So I'm going to start off with answering one of your questions before I introduce myself. Is why I decided to focus on boys, men, and dads specifically. Is men are, I feel like we still need to grow up. We still need to talk about this. Women are ahead of us about this. Like they're very vocal, they're emotionally very available, they're in tune with their emotions, and it's just how we are now. Not to say that there are not exceptions to that rule. I'm
Yeah.
not saying that, but that's how I felt that with in my life, with my friends, and in community in general. So that's basically why I decided to focus that, because there are enough light bearers in, like, including you, and there's so many light bearers for women, and helping them to get over that stigma. uh, Not many men, because again, that's the whole point. This is why it's such a big deal. This is why it's a stigma that we are not talking about it.
Yeah.
And as a man who is half of his life, 39 years, hopefully I live till 100, then it will be a little bit over that. But I feel that I have a son, 2.5, well, which is he'll turn 3 in next month. I feel that I have a responsibility as a father to do something that will help the next generation, that
Absolutely.
what we faced in our generation,
Mm.
uh, at least try to raise awareness to that, and give everyone some tools to uh, understand and look from a different perspective and lenses, and that, hey, how we were raised, our generation, and how the trauma and how the stigmas, how the whole definition of this is how it should be, and don't speak up, boys don't cry, don't throw like a girl, man up. How can we change that narrative, so that even if we cannot change, at least we can try our best to leave some sort of knowledge, some sort of tool, some sort of extra oomph, I guess, if I can say, for the next generation to take, and really kind of start thinking like, huh, should we really be following the stigma? Does the stigma mean anything? So it's just kind of taking a stance at breaking this cycle of stigma that we're around. And men are responsible for that. Like, your question about why men is because the majority of it is really that it's just how our society is created, right? Patriarchal society. We at one
When we
point
are
we thought about that patriarch is like the main thing, but it's not. Yeah.
When you're mentioning about like society, I know our both of our roots are from the same country, so
Right.
our brought up will be a little different than the other people, is what I'm guessing at least.
Hmm.
So you doing this research or like talking to other men through your podcast, have you seen like any big differences in the way that we were brought up versus the other people?
hmm So that's a very good question. So I'm gonna tie this together. So basically, it's a very good question because doing my podcast, doing this research for 18 months, what I'm seeing and talking to professionals, talking to researchers, talking to scientists, talking to survivors, women and men, and it's all over. It's not about South Asia, East Asian community.
Hmm.
It's not about Europe. It's not about America. It's there.
Yep.
Now, the way it shows up is different for sure.
Mhm.
There's different ways uh, because of the culture and our socioeconomic uh, like a strata, or basically this is how our society is. Yes, there's difference how it shows up. Culture does play a role big time, but having said that, I will also say what I found is like man up, this stigma, boys don't cry, it's everywhere.
Yep.
Now there are when we grew up in India or in Southeast Asian community, I should say, our because of our cultural uh, awareness and because of our cultural background, how we were raised, about this is how it is, and this is how it should be, and you should not speak up because we are told to respect
Yeah.
like elder people, right, like adults and all that, and no one really kind of gave us that open space. Now again, having said that, I also want to remind your listeners and everyone else that of course there are exceptions. So we are not talking about the exceptions. The problem is exceptions are so small in
Yep.
percentage, but overall if you see the bigger macro picture and 30,000, 50,000 feet overview of that, that the stigma is real, it's
Mm.
there. Now coming back to this country, now we are talking about America. Like I'm writing a book, Man Up, and I'd say that imagine a Marlboro Man, the advertisement that used to go like a Marlboro Man smoking a cigarette and like riding a horse. Imagine a Marlboro Man walking into a therapist or a counselor's office saying that I'm depressed.
Mm.
That's not going to jive with
Yep.
an image of a man. So
Yep.
that's the reality we were brought up,
True.
right? That's the society we grew up with. Now, what do you expect from our previous generations, even including ours, that that's a man. That's how a man should behave. We should not cry. We should not. No. The problem is we're specifying these emotions as gender based.
Mm. Yep.
It's not a gender based emotions. It's a human emotions. Crying,
Well said. Yep.
smiling, sad, anger. It's a human emotions. These are human emotions. Like we have created a society where we are basically labeling these emotions as gender based.
Yep.
If a girl cries, it's okay. If a boy
Yep.
cries, toughen up, man up. No.
Likewise, even the other parts, like if a girl is talking back to you, again, yeah,
Mhm.
I totally get what you're mentioning. Like it is not gender-based. Emotions are like, yeah,
It's
human.
human, and then what you're doing, you're creating both side. And I tell people that when I talk about this about the boys and men, you also have to realize like these affects our women too. And there's two ways it affects. And one is when you are raising your son, like specifically like as a dad, if I keep telling my son, man up, toughen up, don't cry like a girl, he will start internalizing this thing that, oh, I am not supposed to cry, but a girl is supposed to cry. He's immediately getting he's gonna start this the next generation gonna grow up objectifying
Yep.
women, because you are at the same time you're also telling the women that it's okay to cry, it's okay not to be strong.
Yep.
So it goes either way, and that's where I think like the stigmas and this whole shallowness of it should be brought to light more and more through podcasts like yours, mine, and so many amazing people I've interviewed, and they have their podcasts, they have their platforms. And I think like we are getting there. There's a lot of awareness that's being raised, but definitely we're not there.
Yep.
But there are, now we have the opportunity. You can see it, we just have to seize it. And that's how I kind of relate that with my platform and podcast.
Your book, the title of your book, Man Up, is sounding so interesting, actually, intriguing, actually. So,
Hmm.
why do you choose that, and what exactly made you to write that book?
So same similar thing that I'm doing my podcast with, right? Because it's a different avenue to reach to people and kind of share my knowledge. And I openly tell people I'm not a therapist, I'm not a medical professional, I'm not a counselor. I'm just another ordinary guy, like who is an engineer, 9 to 5. I'm a dad, uh, and and the thing is, I I live this life,
Why is that
and
important to you that you chose this kind of a line of work? I mean, you have 9 to 5 job, even I have mine. And yes, we sure are inspired by something or like even sparked by some other thing happened to us. So what exactly sparked you that moment that
I
you
think
wanted to
like
say that?
the very first thing I would say is my son.
Hmm.
It's absolutely, he's my why, he's my world, he's my love, he's my everything. And I think like that's one thing that I'm like, and it may sound dramatic, but that's how I see it. I'm a big believer in stoicism. I'm a huge stoic guy, right? Like, and at the end of the day, we will be gone. What
Yep.
we are leaving as a legacy, that will stay. And I want to make sure that I leave something for my son. And I want to, yeah, right. um I want to make sure that what I faced, and I'm gonna get into in details in a few minutes, that he doesn't have to face.
Yes.
I'm giving him more avenue and tools that he can have in his lifetime, that he can at least be protected from those evilness, or from those things that happened to me in my life. Having said that, when you said why, I feel like I went through this. I had the resources, and I had the intellect not to do any stupid things like suicide, or take my life. Although the thoughts did come, and again, that's another stigma. And these are the things that
True.
keeps me up at night. That we have created these, and no one is speaking up because everyone is afraid. Because the moment you speak up, now you're gonna go to an institution.
Yep.
Now you're gonna be held in a mental health institute. Like, how would you expect someone to open up if we are already giving them a fixed route and a
Yep.
consequence of, oh, you're depressed, there we go. No one's gonna open up. Everyone is different. Yes, there are time and there are need for it, but I think like we need to create that safe space that we all talk about but really don't give to each other. We need to start really taking action. We need to start really understand that it's not about just talking the talk. You really have to give
Yep.
it, because otherwise, like, we talk about it, it happens to us, then the very first thing we like, oh, I gotta call a mental institution, or I gotta call, because it happened to me. uh, um
Great.
so so that's why I'm like, there are people who are losing lives, there are people who doesn't have that. So that's why I'm like, how can I use this pain, use my pain as a purpose? And I say it all the time, like, use your pain to live to you in purpose, because your pain can serve as a purpose, not just for you, but for someone else who might have given up already. So that's why I started it. And of course, my son is an inspiration for sure.
So do you want to share us your actual story?
Yes. So So basically what happened is everything kind of started back when my son was born, and I think he was 6 months, 6.5 months old, just around that time. And I remember one day I was changing him, and suddenly I felt like just numb, and like the whole I literally felt I was having a heart attack, and didn't realize it went for like good 20, 30 minutes. And I was really scared. I was like, okay, this is not right. Like, I never felt something like this, and I cannot even explain it. I still haven't been able to express it, except that it's fear. It was very scary to me. um, so then, in aftermath of that, was like talking, and through counseling, through therapy, I found out that all my childhood trauma came back. And what the trauma is, I was sexually abused as a kid, and from close family members. So, and I never really told anyone about it, and even I kind of forgot about it. Like, I had that always, but I never, like how you don't really think about it
Yep.
too much. So it was there, and that changed everything. And plus, also, I was going through a very rocky marriage, uh, and that didn't help either.
Yep.
And what happened after that is compounded with that is, I reached out to a couple of my friends, and all I got is like, it happens, and they're married guys, and just man up, it's all good, right? And when I needed the help most, I didn't get it, and that's where everything kind of started. And this is why my book's name is Man Up. And I mean, basically man up, but subtitle is let's redefine it, because we need to redefine this word. This is enough is enough. But
Yep.
um, so that's kind of like it all started with that. And I started working through therapy, healing, and really working and through the trauma, and get better and take care of that. Because uh, if you really see the signs, is like trauma stays in your body,
Yep.
and it just shows up in weird ways. And that's what I learned, and it was an amazing experience to understand how everything works. And I got obsessive with finding more and more and more, and it just like a lot of other things came up, and how I do things, why I do things, and all that. And so I'd always been a self improvement nerd, but this kind of took me down a completely different route about trauma and all that uh, grief that we process, what we don't process as a kid, especially in, of course, Southeast Asian culture, like mental health. When where we grew up, and I'm 39, I'm talking about 80s and 90s when we grew up. Uh, no one really talks about it. No one really, like,
Even though
everything
I
is
don't think
fine.
anybody is talking about it. Even
Right,
today, it's not a thing that
right,
exists for them.
right. So I don't know, like, that's just part of the culture. And so you're not, it's just people, again, that's another stigma. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, mental health is a stigma. And I read this quote, and I really believe it, is, you have a brain, that means that you have a health,
Yep.
brain health. So you got to take care of it, just like you have a body. You got to take care of your body to go to work out, and health of the same thing with brain. So yes, of course, it will get sick, and it's nothing bad. Now, at the same time, having said that, there are people, they tend to judge, and that's where I keep talking about safe space. You need to give that safe space to people. You
Yep.
cannot judge them. You cannot immediately come to conclusion with your own self. And that basically, what that happens is you're projecting your own imagination
Yep. Yep.
on them, and so it also doesn't help. So all of this, like, all these specific instances, and my sexual abuse in in India as a kid, and that's not been processed because I never told anyone. I never really told anyone in my family about this. All of this just came because of the fact that now I have a son, and
Mm.
my my subconscious immediately reminded me, like, as a it's a data instinct, right? We just don't say these terms, mama bear and papa bear. Like,
Yep.
there's a reason for it. Our instinct kicks in, like,
Yep.
boom. and and I think that's just my instinct just kicking in, telling me that remember this. And it's good. It was good because it gave me time to process and heal. And now I'm more aware of it, and I'm helping my son to make sure that he's aware of it. I mean,
Yep.
he's about to be 3, but still, I'm taking steps that no one had in our generation told us.
Yep.
I'm giving him that safe space to talk to me,
Yep.
and of course, I'm showing him different steps that he can take, and he can openly communicate, not in language of babies, but in language of adults. So
I have heard, I have interviewed the other people about the same topic. I've heard usually parents give different names for the private parts. And when they are actually expressing that not to the parent, to other people, they don't really understand what these kids are actually trying to explain.
correct.
So
Yeah.
people say, like, yeah, introduce the actual terms instead of whatever the way
Hmm.
that you wanted to choose for
Right.
it.
I literally had a discussion with his mother, my ex, the other day, that you need to stop, babying his private parts. I kind of shared the articles, and she agreed. She's like, "Oh, okay," because then now we are on same wavelength. But yeah, I mean, it's very common, and there's nothing, like, no one teaches us unless you go through it. I think, like, one of the biggest thing that, of course, there's like two different things here, like a complicate makes it complicated. One, of course, my son's mother and I'm not together, so that already is a little complicated. Like, you kind of maintain a boundary, you kind of make sure, like, you just focus on your kid. And secondly, you also realize that I've been sexually abused, she was not. So I'm gonna definitely be a little bit more protective, a little bit more aware of it. And my sixth sense will tell me to do something, that I will do, and make sure I'll do the right thing, and I'll make sure that my kid has the tools. So you have to have that communication, you have to explain to people why you're doing this. And data shows it. That's the way it should be. You should be Our kids should learn their private parts, specifically if we are talking about sexual abuse and rape and childhood abuse, because it's happening. You believe it, we can turn our head on the around, but, like, it's still happening. We know it's happening. It happened to us. I know it.
Yep.
So I rather be prepared than be not prepared, and
Regret
say
afterwards. Yep.
my kid, at least give him a chance.
Have you ever been like when you're sharing with your friends or like not in the podcast? Of course, podcasts are like safe place these days for us to
Hmm.
talk about anything because we
Sure.
made our own platforms to actually talk about this. But when
Right.
you're explaining this to your friends or anybody, have you ever been shamed or like, yeah, them coming back and pointing the fingers at you, saying, apart from saying like, yeah, man up, it happened, just forget it. Apart from that, is there any other unnecessary talk or like instances that happened to you?
uh Not with my friends. And having said that, I'll tell you, like, I'm a very private person, and I choose who to open up to about certain things. um, and these are very, very private topics. And really few of my friends know. Of course, with podcasts, though, I'm being vulnerable and sharing because to raise awareness, not to get pity or
Yeah, exactly.
self pity or empathy or sympathy. Uh, but no, most of my friends I opened up to, Indians, or uh, like my friends here in America.
The reason that I specifically want to ask that question, for girls, it is easy to express, but again, they get a question back. I have been asked, like, if you are not throwing yourself at the other person, they'll not do anything to you. I'm like, so you expect a 7-year-old kid or 8-year-old kid to throw themselves at a 50-year-old man? And I don't really understand. Okay, forget about if you don't know about my childhood thing. Even today, the it is like a general statement that is given, like, yeah, if you are not throwing yourself at a guy, they won't really like hit on you, right? So
Hmm.
maybe it is your fault, or like you are provoking with your dress, or like with your talk, with your body language. Why is that? Like, do you hear the same thing from the other side of it, like from men, the people that you are talking, or like your circles or things like that?
No, and I'll tell you why you hear this and why we don't. And that's exactly what we're talking about here, the stigma again.
Yep.
We are creating, again, it goes back to man up and boys don't cry. It's okay for men to pursue women, and it's absolutely fine. But the
Yep.
problem is, and that's exactly why we don't get to hear this, because we are like, yeah, if you pursue a woman, it's fine.
Fine.
Um, but if a woman is trying to pursue someone, then they will be like, oh, you're being, you know,
Yeah.
too uh, not too modest, I
Throwing.
guess, to
Yeah.
keep it PG in, on this,
Yeah.
on your show. Um, but and that's the problem. And that's the problem, because we have, again, it comes down to labeling and identifying and objectifying the gender roles, and we have created this narrative in our story. So the friends who are telling you this, they're unfortunately projecting a story that they have been told, they had been part of. And unfortunately, as I said, like sexual abuse survivors, sexual emotional abuse survivors, gaslighting survivors, any sort of abuse survivors has that knowledge of empathy to
Yep.
understand, because you had been there, who the other side who didn't. And if they are not empathetic, like, and I had been in a relationship, the partner was not at all, and then it's difficult, then it's very difficult to have that connection, have that knowledge, and have that same level of empathy with them. And this is why I said, like, I am very careful about who I let into my space and open up and share. Of course, before I decided to do this podcast and really open up and raise awareness, but still today, even if anyone hears my podcast and hear your podcast and several other podcasts that I opened up to, come and talk to me, I choose who I get to explain and go into detail with versus who I not, because not everyone will understand, and I don't like to spend and waste time because they won't.
Yep. Yep.
So it's a two-way street. So the fact is that's my boundary, that's the boundary I've created for myself, because I know what I've been through, and it's very hard. And in case of you or anyone else for that matter who survived these abuses, we know what we had been through.
Yep.
All these years we had been told that we are the one to be ashamed of. It stops right here. This is exactly why all these things happening, breaking this cycle, that I'm going to stop. I'm not going to let anyone tell me
True.
that I should be ashamed of something. No, I was not the perpetrator, like someone else was.
Yep.
So,
But I guess, as you mentioned, that stigma of being a female, getting that question is like so easy. For men to hear
absolutely.
that kind of a question is like little rare.
Yes. Yes.
And
And
with
then
the other,
that's exactly my point, is we this is why we need to raise more awareness in men and boys, that don't objectify them,
exactly.
because if we don't, we are really telling women to
Yep.
be a CEO and all that. All everything is happening is good. Me Too movement, love it. But if we also not taking care of other piece of the puzzle, that is men, and
Yep.
not in raising awareness that how you should behave and how you should look and how you should treat women, we are still missing half of the puzzle.
Yep. So
There's a reason all the mass shootings are, or mass shooting uh,
yep.
shooters are all men.
True.
So,
True. And when you mentioned like you have done a lot of research past 18 months, were there any, of course, there should be like a lot of interesting facts that you might have found.
mhm.
Would you be able to share like few of them that really made your thought process change, or like impacted you a little more than what you are already?
Oh, the big time. I think the first time, and it's all over my social media, and I keep reminding people about that. Like, And I'll be very honest, like I'm like, I'm not looking at the right article. When I first read those some couple of those articles, I'm like, I'm not reading the right articles. I gotta go and take a look at it. So 70% of all suicides are men, and
Mm.
I couldn't believe that. I was like, this is a wrong thing. I don't believe it, and it's not here, it's global,
Yep.
but it's true. And then basically 10% of men at any given point of time in their life had gone through any sort of PTSD and anxiety and have not told their partners.
Yep.
48.8% men were emotionally abused versus 48.4% women who were emotionally abused. That just blew my mind. Like it's 50-50. People think about men are not emotionally abused. They are. Uh, and it just blew my mind. Like, hold on a minute. The fact is, again, we have created this patriarchal society at one point
Yes.
where we thought like we will be the torchbearer, which was complete BS. And we have also created a negative effect of that is men who are getting emotionally abused are not reporting. Again, it's the man up. I don't want to report it. I don't want to talk. And I was part of it,
Yep.
right? I was part of it. And so some of these data are just staggering. They're just you can't, like when you start looking at that, it's amazing. Like just, and then I think one of the another thing was men are 3.5 times more likely to be addicted to substance or alcohol over women. So there's like plenty, and there's so many of these research articles. And once I started reading those, once I started looking them up, and then of course like talking to people on podcasts and platforms, I'm just surprised that no one really raised an awareness or raised an alarm like 10
Mm.
years ago,
Yeah.
12, 20 years ago.
I don't think like yeah, this social media exists that much at the point of time. So even if somebody wants to talk about anything, it will be like to that closed community. Nothing is like a global or like at least like with
Right.
a bigger audience here.
Yeah. And
So
I think you're right. Social media at least is helping us seeing other people opening up, or the podcast, what I'm doing or what you're doing, what other people are doing. At least it's helping and raising an awareness. And in case like someone didn't want to open up, now they are getting that little bit of courage every day. Like, okay, maybe I can open up. Maybe I can talk about my abuse.
now that you started this podcast, I think you're doing it like for a year right now.
No, no, no. I launched it in July, so it's about 5 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're doing this now. So what is the next step? Are you continuing going to do this? Or is there any other segments that you're going to include or like start doing any additional work on top of the podcast?
So it just kind of branches out, right? Because this podcast would always be there, and I'm gonna keep bringing stories to life through my platform, and diving deep into more of a science-based behaviors, and of course, like more professionals, and talking about like yesterday, I had a counselor and a therapist, specialist, trauma specialist, and getting into very scientific evidence of all these behaviors of trauma and what happens. So, yes, so the podcast will keep going. I am also, of course, as I said, like I'm writing the book, planning to launch it by 2021, in 2021. And then one of the things that I'm working on right now is that kind of branched out from that is, which is again, everything kind of like how I dealt with it, how I felt, and how I did. I'm kind of giving it back and serving. Is there's a program or a journal, however you want to call it, I'm creating for dads to connect with their kids.
Hmm.
So because I feel like men are so project based,
Yeah.
and if you're not emotionally available, it's very hard to connect with your kids. And I am learning that, and I have changed that. and I am much more present every day with my kid. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to share this, what I'm doing every day with my kid. So it's in the works. I'm trying to get things finished and then probably launch soon, um, either in a journal based or in a course based something to really kind of give dads some tools that you can use these tools to do some fun things with your kids and keep those memories before they grow up too fast, and which they are.
Definitely, I'll totally agree with that. I spend almost like a couple hours to 3 hours per day with my son even today.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what topic he talks or like what topic I wanted to share, but yeah, we still talk like 2 to 3 hours. And everybody asks like, what do you actually talk to your son for so long? If I'm talking to him, if somebody called me, I'm like, I'm not picking up the call. Or I just pick up the call and say like, I'm with him. Do you really need anything really urgent? And if they are like continuing talking, I bluntly tell them like, yeah, let me talk to him. We'll talk later.
Right.
Everybody asks me a question like, what is the topics that you are actually talking to? When he's a kid, okay, that you are the only person. Now that he's like a teenager or even crossed,
Mm-hmm.
what is the topic that he can talk to? He talks about every other thing in the world. It doesn't matter.
Right.
We don't have any specific boundaries like, yeah, he cannot talk this topic or like I cannot share about this. Nothing in that way. We talk everything.
Yeah.
And like,
And that's important, right? Because you need to give that safe space for them to talk to you, talk to their parents. So
yeah, again, like that resonates with your point saying like, if you have gone through something, you will be always protective and try to launch that communication first. Since maybe though I did not acknowledge my own trauma for all these years, but that
mm-hmm.
was always there. Like even for me to send him for like sleepovers or anything anywhere, I keep on like a tap on him.
Mm-hmm.
I made him a habit like, okay, the moment he reaches to the other, I mean, of course, I'll drop him, but every half an hour or so, he'll check in with me. And he made a habit in a way like now that even if he goes out somewhere with his friends, he'll call me back half an hour or like an hour later and say, like, I'm checking on you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I am staying at home and you are the one who is roaming around and you wanted to check on me. He's like, yeah, I'm just checking on you. You're not dead, right? You're fine, right? Okay, then I'm fine.
That's a good kid. That's a good
Like,
kid.
yeah, he doesn't really care to FaceTime anytime that I call. If I really feel like, yes, I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to, whatever to make sure. Sometimes you will feel that. And if I call him like, okay, pick up the phone, I wanted to see you or something, he'll just like call me from anywhere. It doesn't matter. Even if he's with like 20 other kids around and have like a blast over there, it doesn't matter. He'll just pick up the call and say like, yes, I'm fine. I'm having fun.
Right.
He'll just like show it around and he's like, I'm fine, mom, don't worry.
Right.
He doesn't really know the reason until up very recently, but yeah, now that he knows the reason, he actually make sure
Make sure he
everything is
does
okay
that.
with, yeah.
See, the thing is, that's exactly what I'm talking about. Like we need to start opening up these conversations from next generations, because the generation we grew up in, we never really had that space. Of course, not to say that I grew up in a very good family in a way. Like my parents were very understanding, but still, um,
These topics were
the
never topics at all.
no, it was not there. My mom was still was very open and like had that space for both of us, me and my sister, both, my dad too. But still, there was a stigma that was there. It was not like as now. You can say, as you were saying, that it's you can easily talk,
True.
and you have created that space.
With my parents, though, I mean, there are two things to look at into that. Even if you are actually able to tell to your parents, they should have enough knowledge or understanding about what you are actually trying to explain them.
Yeah.
So that was a failure from my parents to me. Though I tried to explain them at that point of time, they couldn't really understand. And when the other person picked me up right in front of them and started kissing me, saying like, yeah, I was missing my granddaughter, so I was just trying to play with your daughter. Hope you're fine with it. These two were like, yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah.
So which in turn for me is like became a normal because my parents gave that permission.
Mm-hmm.
it is absolutely right. He can do whatever he wants, but
Hmm.
since they also doesn't have that education, so whatever you're doing today to educate the parents first, then we can have these communication channels, or like you're teaching the kids. All these comes like afterwards, or like while you are teaching kids in the schools. Schools are trying to teach about this topic a lot these days.
Right.
Not be enough, but again, like at least they are trying to teach them good touch, bad touch, all these things.
Right.
I don't think I have ever heard those terms at all in my childhood.
No. No. When we grew up, I'm pretty sure like we didn't. So.
I have no clue about them. So even if I'm coming out and telling to my parents, like, yeah, this is not feeling okay, for them explaining back to me saying, like, yeah, it's okay. He's just missing his granddaughter. You're fine with him. So all that I know, or like little that I know with that situation is like, yeah, whatever he's doing is okay, it seems. So why am I like stopping it?
Right.
Or like, yeah, he is just trying to pamper me. Or like he's just giving that extra attention to me, which I'm not actually getting it from anybody. So
Right.
that's how it continued for me, like almost 3 years. So it doesn't need to be that long. It doesn't need to have that situation or any of it. But it did happen.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, educating the parents about the subject is also like as important as when you're teaching to the kids
Absolutely.
as well.
And that's exactly why I was talking about like that course and the journal that I'm working on. Like it's one thing that yes, this I'm working on the man up and bringing stigma. But as you said, like not you just you're not only teaching your kids to be aware of it, you also have to be aware of it. And I
Yep,
talk about you first have to be aware of it as parents. And I talk about this is you have to unlearn.
yep.
You have to unlearn these stigma. You have to unlearn these behaviors that's been plaguing us. Because if you don't unlearn it, then how will you even understand? How will you even teach? You are going to teach the same thing that you learned. You have to unlearn those behaviors and then you have to relearn how you can navigate and how you can teach these new tools that's in your toolbox and how you can give that to your kids.
Shifting the topic for you being a single dad, how is that going on?
Oh, single dad, it's fun. It's fun because like we have so much to do. I get him like every other weekend and a couple of days during the week, and and that's not the stigma, right? Like that's not the stigma that eventually I will cover, and I'm already talking about it. Is even in court system, it's been looked at like dads are, you know,
Hmm.
not well with
Equipped.
like equipped with taking care of the kids. And again, and I say it with all I say it all the time is like there are exceptions.
Yep,
There are absent fathers. There are alcoholic fathers. There are just same way there are from the women too. But it's a stigma that we have created, and again it comes down from that man up, all this.
yep,
It's a trickle down stigma, and I this is why I told you in the beginning of the show, these are micro stigmas, I like to call it. Like this is the main stigma that
yep.
started it, and then it just branches out, and so like there's so many other stigmas that we create, right? That dads are not well equipped with. But I'll tell you something that I know so many dads, like I mean, like they're my role models for their son, for their kids. So I get to spend time with him, but it's not 50-50, it's 60-40. So, of course, my ex has 60% and I got 42% or something similar. It's about 60-40. So, no, I mean, every time I get him, like, I mean, like we already have some sort of things planned, and I kind of go with his uh, things that he likes to do. And this is why I'm talking about this journal, is because eventually in a matter of a year already we had done so many things, and I tell my friends and they were like, oh my god, like tell me what you do. So I kind of tell them, and then I'm like, man, I mean, like amazing. So that's kind of gave me the idea, like, oh, what if I share all these activities just not with my friends but with other people that you don't need much to connect with your kid. You don't need to buy them gigantic and like enormous, crazy,
Like
expensive
100% agree
things.
with that.
you can do things at home, you can do things taking a walk. It's just how you bond and how you can teach. And so anyway, so yeah, that's what we do. And we just have fun. We just have he calls me Dada, so we have Dada sometimes. So
That's so
and
cute.
I think the biggest thing is, to be very honest with you, I am learning to be more present because of him. Because more and more, when I spend time with him, he needs your attention, right? Because he's 3 years old. And then you are more present, and then you're at a point, you are like, you forget rest of the stress of your day, like you're just kind of with him then.
Yep.
So it's definitely making me a better person for sure.
That's so good, actually. Even I don't take him out too much or like any of it. It's just like sitting before the TV watching together some interesting show for both of us. Yeah, even if we want, we walk with our dogs. I have two.
Yeah.
So that is like we go to the dog park, sit there for like an hour or so. The dogs will be just roaming, and we'll sit at a corner, keep talking about
Talking.
anything and everything. So
And
yeah,
that's what it is. I give him, even my son is 3 years old, and I do this thing called 5 minute speech, and I just started it like literally last week. And I'm like, you know what, he loves to talk. For 3 year old, he's a talker. And I everyone tells me, like, how come your son is so vocal at 3? I don't know, but he can actually carry on a conversation with you. And so I kind of started doing this since last week. I give him 5 minute speech. I'm like, okay, you have 5 minutes to tell me, how did your day go? Tell me 5 things that you liked about today, and then finish up with one thing you are grateful for. So stuff like that, I'm trying to incorporate those, because I feel it's very important for our kids to understand these. I don't think, like, no one's teaching our kids these personal development tools in schools.
true.
You and I, and when we grow up and when we go through pain, we find these personal development tools. I think, like, these should be included in curriculum more than anything else. How to feel gratitude, how to be grateful, how to be more present. And we do like meditation, and he always tells me, like, turn on the meditation music in the at night, and that's how he sleeps. So just stuff, things like that. I think, like, kind of, it's serving both purpose. It's serving my selfish purpose of raising him the way I like, and it's also giving him the tools that he maybe he won't use it for a while, but one day he will look back and he might get back to it. At least he'll have all these tools in his toolbox to look fall for when he needs
He'll
it.
definitely have that, at least like understanding of what it is to that one day.
Right.
Definitely that will pay off big time over
Yes.
for a period. Now that
I
those
hope so. I hope so.
trust me, it will. One more question, like when how I don't know if you're really dating anybody. Are you, if you are looking for, how does that go for you? You do know our culture. That is
Right.
an entire different animal over there.
Right.
But in generic, if I have to talk, these are the things that I always see around. Whether you put yourself out for dating or not, it doesn't matter. Nobody really cares about what I wanted or like whether I'm looking for it or not.
Hmm.
But those are the things that I always get. So from that perspective, I'm sure you might not have that kind of an emotional things, but do you have any of that? What kind of an experience that you are facing?
So first of all, before I answer the question, unfortunately, uh, I'm like, this is not the first time I'm hearing this about single mom dating.
Thank God.
And
Seriously,
it it is, again, it goes back to the same thing that I keep talking about. Is
definitely.
it comes down to the same thing, that how we are objectifying our gender roles. And it's sad that the moment they feel that you don't have a partner, you're it's available, you're easy. And again, it's just objectifying and labeling those, right? Because that's just how the society, and again it comes talks about this stigma. And so yes, so definitely I'm sorry that you're going through that same thing. The best way I could tell you is definitely don't lose hope, because there are good guys. and and I tell people that, it's like, once you understand the darkness, and with your life history and with your experience, what you told me and how we talked offline, you will value light. You will know
Yep.
the good and the bad. And and then talking about your friends, and again it comes down to the same thing, that, oh, I want to protect my husband so that he doesn't. The thing is, as you said, like, if you have to, that means you are already insecure about your husband.
Yep.
That means you already know in your gut, like, there's something wrong. And so that's not on you. That's completely a different dynamics and different topic. uh our Of course, for men, it's different for sure. And are there uh, stigmas like this? Not exactly similar to yours, but definitely there will be something, like, mostly to the point of, like, uh kids, uh, and whether you're available or not with kids and all. So it's not that bad. So I had to navigate, and then I think from my side, I had to be careful when I entered dating scene. Is I have a son now. It's less about me, more about him. So I had to, my shift have changed. The perspective that whoever I bring into my life is not just dealing with me.
Yes.
She's gonna be in my son's life. So I had to keep that in mind, very, like, like literally etched in
Yep.
stone.
Yep.
So there like, and then that's how I got very selective. I was very selective. I'm like, I'm not even gonna meet someone if there's nothing going on in just
Yep.
communicating earlier, because I created this whole thing after my divorce, is like, completely, like, I spent time on it, like a dream partner, and like non-negotiable traits and negotiable traits, and absolutely not. um, and yes, I met someone, and she's a mother of two boys, and about my son's age. And we are dating for about 4 months now. And we haven't seen each other's kids, because we both were on the same page on that principles, that we're not gonna see each other's kids until we are sure about each other, until we had all the difficult conversations, until we know that, yes, this is going to a long term. And so we still haven't. We're still figuring each other out. We're still learning about each other, and we still have definitely some time to go. And then we'll see. Around, like, we are talking about meeting each other's kids around Christmas or maybe next year, and we'll see how things goes, how things move. But again, keeping that in mind, like, I do want to mention that the dating scene, as a single dad or a single mom, I think should be very much focused on. And again, it's just my opinion, on the kids, and not on us, because now the perspective will change. If anyone doesn't respect you, they don't respect your kids, vice versa. If anyone doesn't respect your kids, won't respect you. So, and then I also, one topic I also want to cover is, like, I also know, like, some people, they like to introduce their kids to every partner they go on a date with, and that's also not right, because now you're actually, and it's scientifically and proven, and it's research shown, that you're creating an impression in kids' mind, and chances of them being promiscuous or being not serious in relationships are much higher,
Yep.
if you keep doing that. So all these things has to be taken into account, especially when we are all single parents, and we have a responsibility, in most of all.
I wouldn't really know about dating because honestly, I've never dated anybody past 12 years. I don't
Mm.
go out. I don't let anybody home. I'm, I'm good. I'm happy. I'm happy to be single. So yes.
Hey, There you go. I mean, like, that's the thing. Like, I say this a lot. Like, as long as you're happy, choose your happy. And as long as you're happy with in yourself, I mean, absolutely. And I think like one of the thing also people need to realize, like, we hear this thing until we actually take time to process, is you need to start having some self love before you let anyone else. You need to start really figuring yourself out first and be independent and not codependent, right? Like, I mean, like, yeah, I mean, to be very honest, like if my partner, who am I dating right now, if we fall apart, like I'll be like, hey, you know what? It was really nice experience, really nice to get to know each other, but I will not hold anyone accountable. I will not be sad, because I will know that I had given a fair chance to love and to life. And if it doesn't work, then life goes on. I mean, I'm still the same guy, still be happy with my kid. So,
Another one important question that I wanted to ask was like, I don't know how long you and your ex decided to leave. One day, it's not like overnight thing that you have decided, and the next day morning you walked out of it.
right.
Definitely not that way. So there will be a period of that transition, or like for you to get the concrete understanding that okay, this is not going to work anymore.
Mm-hmm.
At that point of time, I don't know. Let's just say if it's in a year, whether you are trying to decide or she's trying to decide. Um, this is coming from a standpoint of rape concept.
Mm-hmm.
Will you ever like force yourself on her saying like, yes, since you haven't decided yet, you're still living with me, I just want this since you are still titled as my wife.
Mm. No.
But a lot of guys look at when I'm talking about this rape concept, not the person that I'm actually interviewing, not the guest, but when I had this conversation to outside people, everybody is like, maybe you are staying in that relationship still because you are still figuring out, or like you are trying to get some benefit out of it.
Mm.
So when he is asking for it, or like you're getting to do that, why are you opposing to it, and why are you labeling it as a rape? Wife and husband relationship should never be considered as rape at all. So
Mm.
what is your take on it?
Well, that's a very deep topic, because
I know this
I,
5 minutes,
I,
10
I
minutes won't be enough, but
no, no, no.
I love
I
to
have
hear thoughts.
I have a friend, I know. She went through similar. She was not married, but she was engaged. Similar situation. And the answer is no, absolutely not. It's illegal. It's not right. And yes, it is. It can be termed rape. It doesn't matter whether a paper cannot justify your emotions. A paper cannot create a an open space for someone to come and violate your body, your physical space, because it's some things that very sacred. And that's the whole point of marriage. That's the whole point of being in a relationship. Otherwise, we all will be going around and basically violating
Violating.
everyone's body.
Yeah.
So the fact that someone even told you that, that's pretty it's crazy. And so yeah, so my answer is absolutely not. And it's very emotional too, right? Because you're not just engaging in a physical activity, you're basically engaging a lot of that emotions in it. Of course, I understand that, yes, at the end of the day, it's a primal thing. And that's how also people look at it. One is not actively supporting it.
Hmm.
The definition is rape. You cannot sugarcoat that. You cannot uh, have it defined as something else. Now, at the same time, you, you can be husband and wife, you can be boyfriend girlfriend, but again, if someone is not giving you permission, that's a freaking no. And this makes me angry, and this makes my blood boil, that people still think that just because you're in a relationship, just because you have gotten a paper or a label that you are someone, you have the authority, or you have, no, you don't have any authority. If I choose not to, you can't. So So I'm sorry again you went through that, and but it's it's an absolute not, and from ethical standpoint for sure. And in my case, no, it's basically I uh, we basically stayed in different rooms.
For me, I'm not like generically giving a stamp that every girl is so innocent in
Right,
that subject. At the same time, if somebody is literally forcing on you to do something that you don't want to be done,
right.
obviously it should be considered. And the way the topic went on with the other person was like his close friends went through some nasty divorce. And in that situation, the girls started playing this card a lot to get a lot of money out of them, it seems. I said,
Mm-hmm.
like, maybe I'm not like, as I said, I can't group all the girls are at one way and all the boys are like, yeah, perpetrators or like whatever. It's their
Right.
fault. But at the same time, if somebody is like able to corner you with that subject, you think about it like what led you into that first off. If
Mm-hmm.
you think like your part is really major into that you actually started it, and after starting, if she is like consenting, you are like at least like leaving it, okay, just finish it off and go. That might be also a different case. I don't know. I'm not in that situation. Every situation, every person, mental ability, strength,
Right.
everything is different.
Yep.
But the question was like, you are still staying in that relationship even though you know your partner is bad.
Mm-hmm.
Since you are still figuring out your ways, maybe your financial settlements or like your social awareness, strength, anything, that is your fault. So
Mm-hmm.
you are asking the other person to do it. That's why
Mm.
they are doing it on you. I'm like, for me,
No, it's again, it's
really like it did not get into my mind at all with that statement.
no, it's still wrong either way. I mean, like, yeah, I mean, we all are trying to figure out like if we're in a bad marriage. I mean, that's a bad marriage doesn't just come up one day, next morning we wake up like, yep, that's where we're gonna end. It takes a while to navigate those thoughts
For
and
these
process
normal
these thoughts.
people, the way they look at it is like it's just black or white. One day you get up, you feel like yes, this is not going to work out,
No,
and just like yeah, boom, you are walking out. I'm like, it's just not that simple. Kids are involved. If kids are there, kids are involved, and you have to figure out a lot of other logistics too. So
right,
first, you are going to talk to each other for that,
right.
and it will take a long time. If the one partner is not really like agreeing for anything that yet, it will take more than
Oh,
what
for
you are
sure.
even expecting.
Yeah.
For me, it took like 10 years to come out of it. But yeah,
Wow.
yeah. From the second day of my marriage, I know that it will not work. And it took 10 years for me to work to come out of it. And yeah, here I am today. So I
And here
just want
you are
to,
today with your story, and especially with what you had been through and raising awareness for uh, through your podcast. And I really wish all the success when you launch. And I will do anything if you need me to on social media and share your stuff. And because I think it's needed, because people needs to raise awareness. People needs to speak up about what happened, and because you never know that your pain can serve as a purpose. And I keep saying that. So I would leave you with this, that you know it's always better tomorrow. I always see this way. Even though today didn't
absolutely,
go all right, I always say like, okay, it's always the next day. It's there.
definitely.
And the fact that you have endured 10 years of bad marriage, and you have an amazing son who
So,
still came through that marriage. And I say this on my things too, that my biggest mistake led to my biggest blessing,
yep.
you know. And I cannot take that away from that. So just basically take that as a being grateful. And
What
I'm
that
like,
made
all
my,
this pain was worth it. Basically, I know it's kind of sound cheesy, but it is the way I
that's
see
true.
it. And
Yes,
that's the way I want to leave your audience and you with, is sometimes like at that moment you feel it's hard, but if you go through it and you look back, and you will be like, I'm glad I went through that. Now I'm a better person.
okay, thank you for tuning in, and you can find me on all the socials at Smitha Gunturi and the show notes for any resources mentioned. See you next week. Take care.